The trial of Kyle Rittenhouse is currently ongoing, but for all intents and purposes, I believe this trial is now officially over. Displayed on the screen, for those who can't see the image, is the prosecutor, one of them, in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, face palming. His face dropped down into his hand as the key witness, the state's star witness, admitted on the stand that he was only fired upon by Kyle Rittenhouse after he advanced on him and drew his weapon. That is to say, in an image shown to the jury, this man advances on Kyle Rittenhouse, drawing a weapon and pointing it at him, and admitted he only got fired upon when he pointed a Glock at Kyle Rittenhouse. It was such a major blow to the prosecution that the prosecutor dropped his head down into his hand, face palming. Now we're hearing many legal analysts just shouting on Twitter, directed verdict. What does that mean? Long story short, that the jury could not reasonably come to a conclusion to convict Kyle Rittenhouse. That is, specifically on the murder charges. That when you have everything admitted by the key witness for the state, on cross-examination, he admitted every single step of the way that Kyle Rittenhouse was defending himself, and he knew it. I mean, my watching this has been insane. I genuinely now believe the state is throwing this. There was a point where they brought up that Gaige Grosskreutz, he's the Grosskreutz, however you pronounce his name, he's the key witness, one of the guys who was shot by Kyle. He admitted he only got shot after drawing his weapon on Kyle. The state even called him out for lying. I couldn't believe it. The state brings this guy up and says, you know, at this point in the night, you drew your weapon. And this guy Gage goes, no. And then he says, isn't that you with the weapon on video? And I'm like, why is the state calling out their own witness as a liar? Now, as of the filming of this video, there's still a lot of information I want to show you, breaking down why this is so bad. I've got some analysis by Andrew Bronco over at Legal Insurrection discussing the criteria for self-defense and how every step of the way the state has done nothing to undermine the claim of self-defense. There's a lot of information on their key witness as well. We learned today in testimony that Gaige Grosskreutz demanded $10 million from Kenosha, and the defense challenged him, saying that if the outcome of this trial could determine whether or not you get your $10 million from the city or state, from the government. And interestingly, the judge actually steps in. He's like, we're not going to discuss what he talked about with his lawyer. But the defense brought up that almost immediately after the incident, Gage had a civil lawyer who is filing a demand for $10 million. And now here he is. The crazy thing is, this key witness has been tweeting nonstop about the trial. These people really don't get it. In fact, tweeting out part of his testimony with a winky face. I don't know if we're going to get a directed verdict, but I'm seeing a lot of legal analysts just shouting it out. And the crazy thing is, as of right now, I'm filming this video, they're about to come back in and present more evidence. Now, the judge, the state has tried to get certain evidence thrown out as hearsay because a former roommate of the key witness stated he was told that the Gaige Grosskreutz said his only regret was not unloading the magazine into Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, the judge says it could be hearsay, but the defense said, I am going to directly ask him if he said it. He can deny saying it. And the judge said, agreed. So that's coming up right now. I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, I'm not entirely convinced a directed verdict will happen. I think this whole trial is a sham. I think everybody understands it's a sham, which means it's happening for political purposes. And there's a bunch of other information about jury or witness interference. Now, apparently there are statements put out publicly by some people saying we know who these jurors are. This is going to get crazy, but let me go through what's going on and break this down for you. Talk about where we're at and the information that's come out so far about the state's key witness and why the prosecutor literally face-palmed. This is crazy stuff. And before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member in order to get access to exclusive members-only segments from the variety of our shows, The Green Room Show, Tales from the Inverted World, and our massive library of content from Timcast IRL. But as a member, you're supporting our fierce and independent journalists. We got a bunch of writers reporting every single day, doing the great fact checking you know and love. But don't forget, you can also subscribe to this channel, share this show with your friends. This URL, take it right now, post it wherever you can. Let people know what's going on. I am going to be showing you this evidence. It's very, very important. And I'm going to show you how the media is lying. Wait till you see the media lies. This is crazy. I wish, it's the trial's currently ongoing. By the time you watch this video, they may have a directed verdict. The judge might be like, I've seen enough. This is ridiculous. It is clearly self-defense. Now, we're not happy that it happened. It was a horrible night of rioting. But we really got to talk about what's going on. That's some crazy stuff. Crazy, crazy stuff. Let me just get into it. So this is an image I tweeted. Rittenhouse prosecution after witness Grosskreutz admits he only got shot after he drew his gun on Kyle and advanced on him. Now, let me show you this video clip. Let me show you this clip here from Viva Fry. Rittenhouse trial should be over immediately. You need to hear this audio. Here we go.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him, advanced on him, with your gun, now your hands down, pointed at him, that he fired, right?
Correct.
Oh, shit! That's it! Directed verdict. Directed verdict on all the murder charges. Kyle knows.
Yeah.
Directed verdict on the murder charges.
So that is Rekieta Law commenting. This is a video that's got 4,416 retweets. As soon as Grosskreutz said, okay, so I'll paraphrase. The prosecution says it was only after you advanced on Kyle and drew your gun that he shot you. And the key witness, this is the key witness, there's nobody else. The key witness said, correct. You hear all the legal analysis. They're all yelling, directed verdict. In the video, Kyle Rittenhouse puts his head down and starts rubbing the bridge of his nose. He knows. That was it. They just admitted self-defense in court. The state has done nothing to undermine that claim. So let's talk about a few things. What the state would need to do to prove it wasn't self-defense and what a directed verdict is. So over at law.cornell.edu, they say a directed verdict is a ruling entered by a trial judge after determining that there is no legally sufficient evidentiary basis for a reasonable jury to reach a different conclusion. The trial court may grant a directed verdict either sua sponte or upon a motion by either party. A directed verdict may be granted at any time, but usually occurs after at least one party has been fully heard. Motions for a directed verdict are governed by Rule 50 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure and Rule 29 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure. Directed verdicts have been largely replaced by judgment as a matter of law. So I'm not entirely convinced we'll get this. It seems like the prosecution is entirely political anyway. The judge may want to make sure that people feel this was done to the T, T's crossed, I's dotted, all that stuff. So he may not just be willing to say, take it out of the courtroom. Plus, there's still the charge of bearing the weapon. So this would be what they're saying is a directed verdict on all murder charges, because they're trying to put this kid in prison for life, saying it was murder, meaning he intended to do this. Clearly, those charges were bunk, but they may get him on something else. Notably, the judge refused to dismiss the weapons charge, so that still remains. So I don't think we'll see this trial be officially ended, but I will just stress there is a possibility that by the time you watch this video and it's published, there's already a directed verdict on some of these charges. Now, that remains to be seen. But I want to pull up, I did mention this on last week's video, but I think it's extremely important for those that are following the case who may not have seen my video last week, what it means to be self-defense and what the state is supposed to be doing but not doing. So this is an article from Andrew Branca over at Legal Insurrection. We've had him on Timcast IRL before. We followed his legal analysis during the Chauvin trial. And this was from day 3. So this is, I believe, Thursday. States' own witnesses damage prosecution, reinforce self-defense narrative. I'll just go through this quickly to give everyone the basic understanding of self-defense. What Andrew Branca writes is, to those who are new to self-defense law or would like a quick refresh on the concepts and of the elements of self-defense, here are those 4 elements and how the state would typically be expected to disprove them. Innocence. The state might attempt to prove that it was Kyle who was the initial unlawful aggressor in any of the confrontations. Imminence. The state might attempt to prove that the attacks Kyle was defending himself against were neither actually in progress or immediately about to occur. Proportionality. The state might attempt to prove that the attacks on Kyle did not present as apparently deadly force in nature, readily capable of causing death or serious bodily injury, and therefore that his own use of deadly defensive force was excessive, and reasonableness. The state might attempt to prove either that Kyle lacked a genuine belief in the need to act in self-defense, or that this belief was irrational and not objectively reasonable under the circumstances. I'm going to stop right here and we'll go through this. Rosenbaum. This is the individual who attacked Kyle Rittenhouse first. In this hearing from the state's own witness, we heard that this man said, "If I catch you, I will effing kill you," to Kyle Rittenhouse. Okay, that did nothing to undermine a claim of self-defense. It bolstered the claim of self-defense. You then had the next man, Huber, who is seen on video, shown by the prosecution, striking Rittenhouse, I believe, twice with a skateboard and trying to take the weapon from him. Rittenhouse fired one round. It went up, hit him in the heart. It is sad that people lost their lives in this, but we need to break this down to understand who is the victim, who is the aggressor. Now, apparently, at one point in the hearing today, the defense accidentally referred to one of the attackers as a victim, and the judge said disregard, because what is at question right now is whether or not these individuals were victims, which is why the testimony from the state's key witness today was so damaging and why people are saying directed verdict on all the murder charges, because he admitted it was only after he pointed a weapon at Rittenhouse and advanced on him that Rittenhouse then pulled the trigger. So let me slow down here. He testified that Rittenhouse had his weapon. When Gaige Grosskreutz testified, he said that he had his hands up and Rittenhouse does not fire. But then he pulls his weapon, advances on Rittenhouse, pointing the gun at him, and then Rittenhouse fires. Clear-cut self-defense. Let's go through some of these tweets and I'll break down what's going on for you. So we got this is from Andrew Bronk on Twitter. The defense says he puts his hands up and Rittenhouse never fires his gun. Key witness confirms, yes. The defense says, during this trial, you tweet out on the 5th, Friday, to be sure to look and listen for the defendant's weapons malfunction and add a winky emoji face. The key witness has been tweeting about this, gloating and laughing. Does not look good. Now, where the state tried to get Kyle Rittenhouse is when they asked Gaige Grosskreutz what happened. He said that when he has hands up, the reason Rittenhouse didn't fire was because his weapon jammed. He then said that Kyle Rittenhouse pulled the slide back to clear a misfire and chamber a new round, essentially arguing that Kyle did try to fire upon him when his hands were up. However, as testified by the key witness, it was only after he pointed his weapon at Kyle and advanced on him that Kyle actually fired upon him. Now, the jury will hear. They will hear that, and the state will probably bring it back up, and that was important. What Kreutz testified was that Kyle was not accepting his surrender. However, based upon watching the video, what the defense brought up is that there's another man before Gaige Grosskreutz approaches Rittenhouse. Another man has his hands up and Kyle lowers his weapon, striking at the credibility of Grosskreutz. Another thing the defense brought up, this is crazy, crazy stuff, is that in the video, you can see Gaige Grosskreutz running towards Rittenhouse with Rittenhouse nowhere near him, and he's reaching into the small of his back to draw the gun. He lied. And the state even called out his lie. This is the craziest thing. While testifying, Gaige Grosskreutz was asked, at this point, did you have your weapon out? And he goes, no. And the state goes, isn't that you holding your gun? And he goes, yes. I don't understand how they're not getting this guy on perjury because he's lied on more than one occasion. This dude was even called out by the defense saying that he had told detectives he had dropped his weapon at some point. And when asked about it, he said that never happened. And then the defense was like, but you told the cop this? And he goes, I don't remember. And then he asked him, you actually told multiple officers you dropped your weapon. And he goes, I don't remember. And he goes, here's your signed sworn statement. And then he goes, the witness goes, yeah, I guess I did. And then he says, so that was a lie. Grosskreutz is like, no, it wasn't a lie. And he's like, well, they can't both be true that you did or didn't drop your weapon. He lied to police. And what the defense brought up is that they said, when you were asked by investigators what your job was, you wouldn't tell them. Grosskreutz says, yeah, for my safety. Crazy. Apparently, what he got him to admit on the stand was that he was not telling the police the truth the entire time. And only now his story is changing. Let me show you a lot more. We got a lot more. Law of self-defense is breaking. Grosskreutz concedes Rittenhouse did not shoot him until he had his Glock pointed at Rittenhouse. When his hands were up, Rittenhouse did not fire. The defense said, this is your bicep shot and the gun is pointed at him. Correct. When your hand's in the air, no shot. When you point a gun at him, he shoots. Correct. Amazing. I don't know how we're still even having this trial. The defense says, now this is where it gets interesting, because before they went to recess, which they're back from by the time of watching this video, and by the time you see this video, they've returned. They want to introduce a statement that may be hearsay, in which the former roommate of Gaige Grosskreutz claimed that Grosskreutz said his only regret was not unloading the magazine into Rittenhouse, which plays to his state of mind at the time. The defense says, I'm going to ask him if he's in this picture. And if Marshall, the former roommate, in the picture. At this point, not going to ask the jury see it, but going to ask him about content of it. And based on his answer, I'll call Marshall to testify if he denies it. The judge says it is not hearsay. So Marshall, the former roommate of Grosskreutz, was subpoenaed to testify on Wednesday. Check this out. You got to see this thread from Julio Rosas. He says, the defense just noted Jacob Marshall, who posted on Facebook about Grosskreutz wanting to empty the entire mag into Rittenhouse, was in the courtroom but is now gone after being served a subpoena. Judge says they need to find out where Marshall is. Now, Marshall left the courthouse unceremoniously. It doesn't mean anything. He was subpoenaed to testify on Wednesday, not today. So here's the post from Jacob Marshall. He says, so the kid shot Gage as he drew his weapon, and Gage retreated with his gun in his hand. I just talked to Gaige Grosskreutz. His only regret was not killing the kid and hesitating to pull the gun before emptying the entire mag into him. Coward. This is very, very important, because even this is the roommate saying that he was fired upon only after he drew his weapon on Rittenhouse. Let me show you some very important information. We have this from heavy.com. Gaige Grosskreutz, 5 fast facts you need to know. This is the key witness the state has. He is someone who was shot by Rittenhouse. They are alleging he's a victim. He's already admitted he's not. They say, first, he approached Rittenhouse with a loaded gun. This is not disputed. But to have him on the stand in front of the jury say that statement of fact, I've said now several times, is extremely important. They say vivid and graphic photos captured on the night show that he was taking part in the protests, and during testimony on November 8th, so they just put this up, he described how he heard shots, thought there was an active shooter, and then he's drawing his gun. Now, here's what gets crazy. The state asked him about this weapon, and they said, you had a gun, correct? He goes, yes. And they're like, you've had it on multiple occasions. And he goes, correct. And they said, and you were illegally carrying the weapon. Or at first, this is funny. He goes, you did not have a concealed carry to be carrying that weapon concealed. And Grosskreutz goes, I did. And the defense, not being stupid, says, yeah, but it was invalid. And then Gage goes, it was invalid. And he says, so you were illegally concealing a firearm that night. Do you have any idea how insane it is? This guy testified that Rittenhouse was making everything worse by having a gun. And he literally brings a gun into the situation concealed illegally. And he has the nerve to criticize Rittenhouse? Check this out. We have point number 2. Kreutz has a prior gun offense. So he was charged and convicted. It was falsely reported that he was a felon. He's not. He does have a misdemeanor conviction for intoxicated use of a firearm. Now, I want to stress this as for the CCW thing. I do not believe there's a such thing as illegally carrying a weapon. I understand statutorily there is a law against carrying concealed without a permit. I get it. I just think we shouldn't hold it against him. That's right. I may not like the guy. I may think he's the aggressor, but he has a constitutional right to keep and bear arms. That being said, as for this case, he was illegally concealing this weapon. 3, Grosskreuz's gun had a bullet in the chamber. He's affiliated with a group called the People's Revolution. During the trial, he was asked if he's a member of the People's Revolution. He says no. Very matter-of-factly. And then the defense says, but you've spoken at their events. And he goes, yes. So you're affiliated? Yes. And you raised your fist and said, long live the revolution. And he goes, yes. This guy is on stage lying. I'm sorry, man. You can tell he's lying. It's my opinion, but the way he sounds, the way he's acting, he just comes off like a liar. And that's my bias. I'll say it right now. I'm not on the jury. I just think this guy's a liar. 4, he is suing Kenosha. This is very, very important. The defense brings this up. He is suing for $10 million. And if Rittenhouse is convicted, it will help him get his money. If Rittenhouse is acquitted, he likely won't. Kreutz described it all as a lot to process. Well, I don't care too much about that, but we have this retweeted by Gaige Grosskreutz. This is very, very important. This shows you the frame of mind of Gaige Grosskreutz. This is the star witness. He tweeted this meme, which is complete BS, by the way, but here's what he said. A guy tweeted, you can see up top, it says the retweet symbol, Gaige Grosskreutz retweeted. Take note, Kyle Rittenhouse. A man named Kenneth Ray McCain stated, combat veteran here, just a perspective. If you arrive armed to a place where violence is happening, prepared for violence, and you engage in violence, there is no self-defense. You are, in fact, a willing combatant. If you do this without being sanctioned by a government outside a combat zone, you are also, in fact, a terrorist. We had another word for armed civilians operating outside the military as well, insurgent. If your recourse to the terrorist is to look up the criminal history of the victims, it is no different than looking up the criminal past of everyone that died on 9/11 in order to justify the hijackers. This kid was illegal all the way around. This ish is ridiculous. Okay, let me point something out. Gaige Grosskreutz retweeted this statement that says, take note, Kyle Rittenhouse. Let me break it down for you. If you arrive armed to a place where violence is happening, Gage did that. Prepared for violence. Gage was prepared. He was drawing his gun. And you engage in violence. Yes, he was there with the People's Revolution, long live the revolution, as they were actively engaging in violence and he was drawing his weapon. He was engaged. There is no self-defense. You're a willing combatant by your own retweet. If you do this without being sanctioned by a government outside of a combat zone, you're a terrorist. Well then, Gaige Grosskreutz is a terrorist. Now, you want to make all the criticisms in the world for Kyle Rittenhouse, sure, but let's reflect upon what he is saying, okay? He's saying this about himself. He testified, oh, they were there with weapons. It made everything, more intense. And the defense is like, you came with a weapon too. We got a lot. We got this tweet. I'm just going to show you the tweet I have where I said he demanded $10 million from the city. We had that not only did Grosskreutz admit that he was concealing a gun he had brought to multiple events, he was carrying it illegally. And how do you think the media is handling all this? As far as I can tell, the case is done. Now, they might get Rittenhouse on having the weapon because he was underage. They may get him on some, reckless endangerment because of Richie McGinnis, for sure. I just don't see, outside of a political conviction, how this carries on. What do you think the media is saying? You're going to love this one. CBS News says lone survivor shot by Rittenhouse at Kenosha protest testifies he thought he was going to die. That's the headline you go with? Not that he was illegally concealing a weapon, not that he admitted to advancing on Rittenhouse, and that it was only after he pointed the weapon he got fired upon? CBS and a ton of other outlets are only reporting this. The New York Daily News, I believe the Daily Beast, could be wrong, are all saying like he thought he was going to die. The state has nothing, and they know it, and the media knows it. Take a look at this egregious fake news from Newsweek. Gaige Grosskreutz testifies Rittenhouse reloaded his weapon while holding him at gunpoint. What? This literally never happened. It's a ridiculous false framing. Grosskreutz testified he advanced on Rittenhouse. He's running towards him when Rittenhouse fires the shot at Huber. He covers his head and backs up and puts his hands up. Rittenhouse does not fire. Grosskreutz says he believes that Rittenhouse then pulled the slide back to clear around and chamber it, thinking that he did try to fire upon him and the gun did not fire, so he had to rechamber a round. Considering the prior testimony that another man who had his hands up was not fired upon, that seems to be inaccurate. His assessment that he must have pulled the trigger because he was chambering around, that doesn't mean anything. We don't know why he was pulling the slide back. Maybe he was clearing around. Maybe he wasn't. He certainly was not holding him at gunpoint because Grosskreutz ran up to him. And he certainly wasn't reloading. Pulling the slide back just clears the chamber and puts another bullet in the chamber. The gun is already loaded. I suppose because they have no idea what they're talking about, they're trying to claim look, this headline is going to create a perception in people that Grosskreutz was stuck there going, help me. And Rittenhouse goes like, ha, and pulls the slide back and aims the weapon. Never happened. Rittenhouse was lowering the weapon when Grosskreutz pulls his gun and points it at him and advances on him, even explaining the distance, saying that he was about 3 to 5 feet away from Kyle, then drew his weapon and advanced from 5 feet to 3 feet on Kyle, and then Kyle fired. I'm going to be interested, because I record this, an hour and a half or so before I publish it. But it's going to be really interesting to see what the court says about this roommate, that Grosskreutz regretted not unloading the magazine into Rittenhouse. Now we can go back and take a look at the state's case. The state brought in Richie McGinnis, who testified that Kyle was basically defending himself. He didn't say it in those words, but he was like, yeah, the guy was attacking him, reaching for the barrel, trying to grab it. You then have the next witness, I believe is Ryan Balch, maybe I'm getting his name wrong, said that Rosenbaum, the guy who chased Rittenhouse, instigating, said, if I catch you alone tonight, I will effing kill you. We now have aerial footage. Rittenhouse is running away, yelling friendly. And then another guy, I think his name was, I can't remember the guy's name, but he fires around in the air. Kyle then turns, Rosenbaum attacks. Hearing the shot, Rittenhouse fires in self-defense. The interesting thing about the prosecution's case is that they tried really hard to make it emotive and sympathetic. Grosskreutz was almost crying. He was just a medic, and he really just wanted to be there to help people. And I'm like, none of that has anything to do with self-defense. So if you take a look at the law of self-defense, Andrew Branca stuff, he writes about this. And one of the things he mentions is that it doesn't matter if the person attacking has good intentions. Let's say there are two cops or two good Samaritans, and they hear there's a shooting happening. So they both run to the scene and see each other with the weapons and start shooting at each other. They're both defending themselves because they're both attacking each other. If Kyle Rittenhouse was being attacked by Anthony Huber, and Anthony Huber believed he was just stopping, a crazed shooter, and I got to be honest, I think so. Anthony Huber is the guy with the skateboard. He didn't know what was happening. This is my opinion. I believe he had no idea what was happening. He heard that guy shot someone, get him. And so he sees a guy with a gun and thinks, I got to stop this guy. And so he attacked Kyle Rittenhouse, hitting him with the skateboard, clearly on video, and then grabbing the weapon, and Kyle defends himself from it. Just because you have good intentions does not mean you're not the aggressor. You are or can be the aggressor. In that instance, you have Gaige Grosskreutz chasing after a guy, not knowing what happened, drawing his weapon. Now, here's the crazy thing. In Gaige Grosskreutz's own video that he filmed, he's chasing after Rittenhouse saying, what happened? Rittenhouse says, I'm going to get the police. According to his testimony, he said, I'm working with the police. Either way, think about that for 2 seconds. This guy, Gaige Grosskreutz, believed at the time that Rittenhouse was working with police. So he draws his gun on him and advances on him by his own admission. That's really strange, isn't it? And if we believe he's a liar and that he really did understand that Rittenhouse said, I'm getting the police, we have a man who was told, let's just not take his word for it, was told, and we can see it on video, that Rittenhouse was running to get police. And his intention at that point was to stop and shoot Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, he says he didn't want a lethal outcome, but he drew a weapon and pointed it at Kyle Rittenhouse. Directed verdict. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it already happened and I have no idea because I'm doing this video recap, but there's a lot of great legal analysts talking about this. Of course, I've been following Andrew Branca, The Law of Self-Defense. We've had him on the show. He's got a book about this. I think he has great logical analysis, and I trust him on his legal analysis. And then we have, obviously, Rekieta Law, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and Viva Frei. Will Chamberlain, also a lawyer, and they're all saying similar things. I think this is open and shut. I think based on the video evidence we had in the first place, the prosecution should have never brought these charges. Maybe they could have brought the lesser charges, but you know what? They knew there would be riots. Now I bet they're willing. I think the prosecution's throwing this out the window. They know there's no case, but they're worried about riots. There's a viral video going around where a guy's basically like, we got cameras in the courtroom. We know who these people are. Essentially saying that if the jurors do not convict Rittenhouse, they will riot. You know what? They're probably going to riot anyway. At this point, however, we've all seen the videos. I've talked to several of the witnesses who were there on the ground. Our video from Timcast IRL with Richie McGinnis is still getting tons of views right now. It's getting replayed, and you should definitely check it out because he breaks down exactly what happened. I think it's been clear from day one. Well, take a look at that photo of the prosecutor putting his hand, face palming. I think we get it. I think they know. But we'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. Timcast IRL is back. YouTube.com/Timcast IRL. You're not going to want to miss this one. We got an amazing guest and a lot to talk about. So thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.